Hi everyone, it's QuickyBaby and welcome back to World of Tanks, and today I've got a full tank review for you of the second ever Tier 9 premium tank destroyer in the game. This is the TL-7. Now this vehicle has been available on the Asia server for about half a year. That's how I specifically have this tank. I have it on my The Slow Toes account, which is on the Asia server. However, Wargaming just announced that there will be more loot crates yet again, just 2 months after we had them for St. Patrick's Day for this special Mars event that they have coming up, where you will be able to get the opportunity to gamble your money to be able to get one of 10 Tier 8 or Tier 9 premium tanks, including the TL-7. Accordingly, if you're a tank collector with every single one of these other Tier 9 vehicles, for 50 crates, I guess, while it hasn't been officiated yet, you will be able to get yourself the TL-7. Now, right off the bat with this tank review, I want to call out Wargaming for this relentless new way that they want to put content into the game, and that is through loot box mechanics. It's bad enough that we have new content at Christmas. Now we have new content at Christmas, new content in March for St. Patrick's Day, new content in May for some kind of Mars event. You know we're going to have loot boxes again for the last Waffenträger event in September, meaning that the loot crates have become every single 2 to 3 months. And so I would strongly recommend, if any of you out there feel that you're spending far too much money in the game, to not get this vehicle and to not participate in these loot crates. Wargaming clearly see this as a new way to monetize their game, and it's not what Wargaming promised myself and a lot of the other content creators, and that was that new content inside World of Tanks would not come bundled. And while it's not coming bundled with lots of gold and lots of credits to inflate the price, now you have to have all of the other 9 vehicles if you want to be able to get possibly the brand new toy, if the TL-7 is of interest to you. And while personally I could have understood this if it was just at Christmas, it's now 4 times throughout the year. Wargaming are clearly ramping up the gambling inside their game to be able to get new content, and so make sure you consider about whether all of the other stuff you get is going to be worth it for you. Now, with that said and done, let's take a look at the statistics of the TL-7 before we get stuck into some gameplay. So the TL-7 is a Tier 9 American tank destroyer with a fully traversable turret, great gun depression, and a formidable auto-loading gun. The 120mm gun that the TL-7 packs has 4 rounds with a 2.3 second intra-clip reload, making this tank able to deal 1,440 damage within 6.9 seconds of the first shot, and it does that with a great amount of penetration. We're talking about 252 on its standard rounds, 315 on its APCR, and it's even got really nice HE with 105mm of pen, which pushes this up to 460 damage, meaning that if you could pen all of those shots on lightly armored tanks, you are doing 1,840 damage within 6.9 seconds, and that truly is nice. It should be mentioned as well that the APCR rounds on this vehicle have awesome shell velocity, 1,492, which makes it very easy to be able to shoot moving targets. However, this tank has a very long reload time, a lot like the 2 tanks that I'm going to be comparing it to, the Cobra and the G-Saw. Now, keep in mind that the Cobra is a medium tank, although as you're going to see throughout this review, the TL-7 certainly blurs the lines between tank destroyer and medium tank, and also the G-Saw. But keep in mind that the G-Saw is a lower tier Tier 8 premium tank, and so you should expect that the statistics are going to be significantly worse than a Tier 9 premium tank destroyer in the form of the TL-7. Now, this long reload of 43 seconds means that overall the TL-7 has very bad damage per minute. Now, you might think, oh, look, it's way better than the Cobra, and the Cobra is a great tank, but keep in mind that most people in the Cobra are going to be doing 490 damage per shot every 1.5 seconds, although they're only going to have 210mm of high explosive to be able to deal that kind of alpha. Now, while you can increase the alpha damage with the Cobra with those HESH rounds, you actually lower the amount of penetration that you have. And the APCR rounds on the TL-7 definitely give it a distinct advantage compared to the British medium tank. And while the TL-7 isn't going to be doing nearly the amount of burst damage that the Cobra deals, as that has a 4.5 second magazine unload time, this is still very scary amounts of damage for any autoloader in World of Tanks. With regards to ammunition, the TL-7 carries substantially more than the Cobra, but I still feel that later on in the game, you might be running out in those very close and long-winded rounds, especially if you've been missing a lot of shots. So now onto the gun handling. It's not really very good news for the TL-7. It's definitely one of the downsides of the tank. 2.6 seconds aim time is way better than the Cobra, but significantly worse than the G-Saw. The 0.4 accuracy is horrible. This thing is not an accurate tank, and you're going to want to do as much as you can to be able to improve that. The gun handling as well, it's awful with regards to the turret traverse dispersion, 50% worse than the Cobra and the G-Saw. However, the movement dispersion is worse than the Cobra, but better than the G-Saw. Accordingly, this tank's gun handling is going to be awful compared to the Cobra, because the Cobra, as well as a medium, can use vertical stabilizers. The TL-7, with its poor view range, needing mostly coated optics on the maps, it really struggles to be able to get a rotation device on this vehicle to improve that gun handling at all. However, this vehicle has much better bloom after firing of only 3 compared to 5 or 3.5 on the G-Saw, meaning that the reticle never really blooms out as much, giving this vehicle a slight advantage compared to the other two tanks as long as you truly aren't moving that gun at all. One of the best things about the TL-7 is the 10 degrees of gun depression. That is very flexible, like a Cobra, although it is 1 degree less than a G-Saw. Now let's take a look at the mobility of this vehicle. 50 forwards and 15 backwards. That's really nice. Not nearly as good as the G-Saw and not as good backwards as the Cobra, but that forward speed will allow you to get to where you want to go. The ground resistances on all of these tanks are identical, and the 17.4 power to weight ratio on the TL-7, while that's slightly worse than the Cobra, it is better than the G-Saw. And you can see that the G-Saw never actually gets up to its top speed limit until, of course, you take the field mod that improves the ground resistances. Then that tank actually becomes much faster than the TL-7. And traverse speed-wise, the TL-7 is very similar to the G-Saw. 24 turret traverse, 30 tank traverse, meaning that it definitely handles more like a tank destroyer rather than the reactionary combat that you can have on the Cobra. Now, one of the surprising things about the TL-7 is it's actually quite well armored. It's not so much of a glass cannon like the G-Saw is. And if we take a look at the TL-7's armor, we can see it's got 100mm on the upper plate, 80mm on the lower plate, but the turret is actually quite thick. It's got about 250 to 270 millimeters of protection over most parts of the tank, with the forehead of this vehicle being a ricochet against all AP rounds. Accordingly, if you have heat, it could be quite good to fire heat at this thing's turret, but it does have quite a large weak point on top of the tank. However, if you use that 10 degrees of gun depression, the weak point becomes less prominent. And now, if you go backwards and forwards, this could end up being quite a tricky tank for your opponents to be able to take out on a ridgeline. With regards to the side armor of this tank, it's 40mm thick in parts along this lower part of the hull and 50mm along the side. So that means that you can side scrape against low caliber guns like 120mm, but as soon as you do those 122s, they're probably going to be able to overmatch you. Nevertheless, this tank should take its chances against its opponents, and especially against equal and lower tier medium tanks, this vehicle will bounce a lot more shells than your opponents might expect. It's also quite a short tank from that regards, especially with the rear of the vehicle, meaning that you can find yourself in positions and hide yourself in cover that your opponents might not be expecting. Hit points wise, 1,500 is not really super special for a tier 9 tank, but it's not as bad as the G-Saw is at tier 8, with 100 less than the Cobra. All three of these vehicles have 370 meters view range, which is pretty disappointing. Nevertheless, as the TL-7 is able to take one of the field mods to improve that means that with a really good crew and maybe some high-level vents on this tank and a premium consumable, you might start to think about dropping the optics altogether. However, you will very much regret that on those longer maps. The camo rating on this tank is not nearly as good as the G-Saw, but it is comparable to the Cobra when moving and actually has substantially better camo than the Cobra when the vehicle is stationary. Crew-wise, the TL-7 has a very generic loadout. A commander, a gunner, a driver, and a loader, with the commander fulfilling the role of the radio operator. Accordingly, you want to focus on skills like situational awareness and recon and concealment on this tank. However, considering that it is a vehicle that likes to side scrape occasionally, repairs can also come in handy. Then taking things like snapshot to improve the relatively poor performance on the turret traverse dispersion and smooth ride to help the moving dispersion can allow you to not bloom out so much and get your shots down range. I personally found that intuition on the loader can also save you a bunch of credits for when you want to change your magazine quickly and deliver it against that heavy tank rather than bouncing your regular rounds, or vice versa if you want to load out to a regular mag because you don't want to waste 20,000 credits worth of gold on a lower tier medium. Equipment wise, I'm going to have two setups on the TL-7. One will run vents, coated optics, and then a turbo. And if you have the ability to use mobility improvement system, This will not only give you the benefits of a turbo, but also a slight benefit to your dispersion, which can really help this tank, as it's the kind of tank that I would love to have like 4 or 5 pieces of equipment on, not just 3. With this build, you're going to have more than enough view range, even if you don't quite manage to get all of the field mods from the beginning to spot your opponents, without having to sit there and activate binoculars. For my second build on the TL-7, I like to drop the coated optics to use an improved rotation mechanism instead. This actually ends up stacking with the improved mobility suite to give you a double effect of gun handling, which can really help you unload with maximum precision. But be warned, if you do this, even with a great crew and a premium consumable and vents, you're only going to have 428 meters view range, so save this for those close quarters combat scenarios. Field mods wise, this vehicle is pretty darn simple. Firstly, you definitely want to take the reinforced suspension, and this one really helps with the mobility of the tank. Next up, improve the accuracy of this vehicle. After that, take the view range, the right-angled periscope. For a slot, I would recommend taking the scouting slot to be able to pump up your view range. And with that second build, what you could do, once you've got that view range slot, is actually move the vents into slot 2. That will allow your rotation device to get the improved slot bonus as well. But until you get that bonus, I'd keep the vents in the first slot as it outweighs that importance. And then finally, you've got a choice of either improving the concealment by 5%, which will actually allow you to get some really impressive camo on this tank, but be warned, it will come at the expense of reverse speed, especially if you're not using a turbo on this vehicle. But you know what? That's quite enough theory crafting. Let's get stuck into some gameplay. So in our first game today, we're going to be playing on steps against some tier 10 tanks, although there are some tier 8s as well, so kind of ideal matchmaking when there's only 2 dangerous medium tanks, albeit on the enemy team. Now, please forgive me today if I make less than pixel perfect plays, and that is because, do you see what kind of ping I get when I'm playing on the server, which I think is located in Hong Kong? Yeah, I'm packing about 270 to 280 millimeters of ping. It's a real weird thing. If you think it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, that means my ping with the server is... And then it has... I'm not sure if that's there and back. Sometimes it feels as if that's just there, and I'd have kind of like half a second of lag. It was really a very surreal experience to try and play with that much ping. And my heart goes out to all of you who that is like your normal World of Tanks, because I can tell you, it definitely makes me a lot worse. Although when I started to get used to it after an hour or two, it wasn't too bad. So I can imagine you can get used to it after a while. But if you've ever played with really nice ping and then you go and try and play with 250 ping or more, gosh, it's like I'm going back in the day and playing on a 56k modem. I'm playing Counter-Strike 1.5. Yeah, blaming my lag for the reason why I wasn't good at the game. I was alright, but not great. At least it's always nice when you had the bad ping and you could always use that as an excuse, like an alibi for you being bad. Kind of what I guess I did on the Asia server as well. Anyway, the TL-7, where is it meant to go? Well, it loves a ridgeline. You can see how bad the aim time is on this tank, however, and even when you're fully aimed, it's still not the most accurate. And look at that shell delay. You can see where my reticle bumps out. In the replay, it doesn't look so bad, but go and watch my Twitch stream if you want to see how horrific it was. So I actually end up hitting the a mill on my team once there, but still a couple of rounds in. But this tank, I have to admit, with that ultra long reload and that lack of flexibility to reload the shells one by one as if it was an autoloader, does feel a little bit frustrating, boys and girls. You are waiting for like 40 seconds after firing just one shell if you want to be able to go and fire your full mag out again. It can make this magazine feel oh so awkward. All of you G-Saw players out there will know just how irritating the TL-7 feels in that regard. However, one thing that really is very nice about this vehicle is just that full gun depression even over the back of the tank. So you can quickly get back and be facing the away from your opponents to run away if you do get caught. So in this kind of a situation, I just wanted the Progetto to come and expose himself, or possibly the Centurion 7-1. But now I've got the awkward situation of having a T-95 on my right, that I don't really have the right ammunition to be able to deal with him. I guess I could load gold and take chances at the top of the T-95 weak points. But again, this vehicle has got only got 0.4 base accuracy. Although thinking about it, I think the roof deck of the T-95 is only about 38 millimeters. So in retrospect, I probably could have overmatched the top of the T-95. So I could have tried to go for shots like that. But again, if you fire and then you get caught reloading during those 40 seconds when the medium tanks try and make a push play against us, then that would be really awkward. So you just got to be really careful with the TL-7. It feels like you're always waiting for that perfect mag. And sometimes if you are waiting for that perfect mag, then you don't ever get to actually fire at all. So I'm sure a lot of you will find this tank quite frustrating. I did as well. And I don't think it's even as nice as the G-Saw at tier 8, because the G-Saw only has that 2-second intra-clip reload. So it feels as if you've got a lot more chance of just dumping out 2 shells and then reloading. Whereas this thing, you know, that 2.3 seconds feels a lot longer. That's a bit of a miss there towards the right. Looks like I didn't aim that one correctly, although I'm not sure if it was me or if it was the 280 ping that I had. Nevertheless, this is where this tank is great. Look at that, 2 rounds into the Progetto, absolutely slamming them down, and then we also get 1 round into the Centurion 7-1. And so for situations like that, this tank is absolutely fierce, an absolute devil of the battlefield. I'm kind of like a TVP, like a Cobra. There are so many autoloaders in the game that have 4-round magazines. G-Saw, but there aren't that many tank destroyers that have 4-round magazines, apart from, I guess, the Foch. I guess I should have also compared this tank to the Foch in a way. I can still do it now. Foch has what, like a 2.5 second intra-clip reload and fires 400 alpha damage shells. It's pretty deadly. But does a Foch have a turret? No. Does the Foch have huge weak points on the top? Yes. Is the Foch pretty much the same speed as this? Yeah, probably. But the Foch has literally half the gun depression. I think that thing has 5 degrees of gun depression, whereas the TL-7 is packing 10 all around the vehicle with that lovely turret. So I decided to make a bit of a false retreat there. I want to try and fake my opponents into thinking that I'm leaving, but actually if I go back, then hopefully I'll get some shots onto the T-54, or maybe even the Bat Chat, or the Centurion, or possibly even just onto the top of the T-95. This thing has to be a tank of opportunity. If you don't manage to catch your opponents in the open, then yeah, it doesn't really go too well. Alright, so the Centurion 7-1 there, left on 26 hit points. What a shame that my team didn't roll just a little bit higher. Could have been able to take out a dangerous medium tank from the game. Hopefully that won't come back to haunt me later on. So this G-Saw, it's pretty much my tank, but just at a lower tier. If you do like the G-Saw, then you will want to get your hands on this vehicle. But then again, I hope you've got all of the other 9 premium tanks. Otherwise, you're going to end up buying a lot of loot crates to be able to get this one. Again, I have to come back to that point, how ludicrous it feels that Wargaming every 2 to 3 months are putting in loot crates and effectively trying to turn everyone into tank collectors. Because let's say you wanted this vehicle and you don't have any premium tanks in the game, but this one looks like the one for you because it's the dream tank that you've always wanted. Then you'd have to, on average, buy 250 loot crates to be able to get this tank. Which is disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. And if you're really unlucky, you'd have to buy 500 loot crates to be able to get this tank. Now you could get really lucky and get it on your first go. But it seems a bit weird to spend, I don't know, £50 or $50 to be able to get 50 loot crates to have like a 1 in 10 chance of being able to get the tank that you want if you don't already have all of the other vehicles. So the Leopard finishes off the T-95. He gets caught out in the open, but luckily I managed to finish off the Bat Chat before they managed to finish off my Leopard friend. And unfortunately for me here, I'm going to take a shot from the G-Saw. Hopefully not 2 shots. Nice. Only just 1 shot from the G-Saw. And do you know what I was thinking right now? Okay, he's fired 2 shots. I've still got 1,200 hit points. I can clip that G-Saw. So it's a really interesting engagement now. I'm reloading before they are, after I managed to take down the Bat Chat. And I was thinking to myself, I can just rush this guy. And I'm pretty much as fast as a G-Saw, as we saw. And he's a little bit too late running away. And even if the Leopard on my team hadn't chased this G-Saw down, I would have been able to get my hands on the G-Saw here. But you know what? If the G-Saw is... I'll just finish them off as I go up around the corner, make sure they don't get 1 shot into the Leopard there. And now this is tricky. 280 ping, or 250 at the moment, trying to get shots through the train tracks against the RT. I was really happy that I managed to get that one down. Unfortunately for me, I actually reload there. I didn't think that the G-Saw would be just in the center of that map. And I thought, might as well reload to get a full mag in so that I can be able to go again rather than try and finish off the Centurion with a low chance shell. Again, with a vehicle like this, as a rule of thumb for me, I think that you should reload if you don't think you're going to get to fire again in the next 5 or 10 seconds. It's what I usually do with most of my autoloaders, unless you know that somebody's about to come after you and it's your final shot. With a vehicle like this, you can usually escape for about 30-40 seconds reload that the vehicle has, because it's not the slowest tank and it's fairly nimble. I have to admit, this tank, it doesn't really look like a tank destroyer, does it? I really wonder how this vehicle is going to do with regards to its win ratio, because to all intents and purposes it plays like a medium tank that has an autoloader, and whenever Wargaming create a tank that plays so much differently to all of the other tank destroyers, then I always wonder if it's going to be the new meta and the new one that everybody wants to play. So I actually use intuition there to switch to APCR rounds, thinking that I'd have to nail the E75, but in actuality all I have to do is put 1 round into a T30, 2 rounds into a T30, although my team managed to finish them off, and now I've got yet another 40-second reload. We're up to 4 kills in this game. It's a real tight one. I'm asking the Cobra for a little bit of help because I'm worried that the G-Saw might come after me, but then again I guess the Cobra also has to worry about the Progetto 66. I asked the Progetto 66 HP because they were too far away from me, and oh, disaster, boys and girls. The G-Saw puts 1 into us. Still got 3 rounds left. I'm trying to bait the shots here. Maybe I can ricochet off my hull armor. But luckily, by keeping them just in place there and keeping them a little bit uninterested, my artillery pulls up 1 shot, and I have to act quickly before possibly the Centurion's going to come after me here. Although, how much quicker can I act than putting these shells in? Now, I'm going to try and get 1 in. I'm going to get 2 in, but as we can see, the G-Saw is actually reloading before me, and he's got a better intra-clip reload, and he'll kill me with the final shot that they have inside that tank. And I'm a 1-shot. He's a 1-shot for me. I'm a 1-shot for him. I've only put 2 shots into him because he got the jump on me while I was reloading. And now I'm in a tricky situation where there's a Centurion who's a 1-shot, a G-Saw who's a 1-shot, and I'm a 1-shot. So I was thinking I shouldn't be spotted any longer, right? So I'll make my way up here and I should be able to get above the G-Saw. And weird, my 6th sense doesn't go off. Why does my 6th sense not go off there? Was I spotted the whole time? Could he see me around the corner? That completely bewildered me and completely confused me, and unfortunately Centurion comes from above me at the same time. Goodness gracious, nice assassination there. The Cobra misses the Centurion, and it looks like those 26 hit points came back to haunt me. So what a bizarre situation there. I stopped specifically to try and re-stealth and then try and go above the G-Saw to finish them off. But when I actually went above the G-Saw, my 6th sense didn't go off again. So unless the G-Saw could see me and maybe had a designated target to keep me lit up again, I have no idea why I didn't actually reset the view range and go after the G-Saw. So now I left my Cobra in the tricky situation of being in a 2 versus 2 with an artillery on support. Now, the Cobra, the other kind of like tier 9 autoloader in this comparison, has really good gun depression, great turret, but the ammunition could be a little bit tricky to deal with. Luckily, we can see that the Progetto 66 wasn't on full health unless the Cobra just managed to shred them while I was fighting. Talking about shredding, the Centurion 7-1 manages to finish off the artillery. So it's very clear to me that the Centurion will be here, so that puts the Cobra in a tricky situation. He can't really reverse, otherwise the Centurion will kill them. I just say good luck. I don't really want to try and micromanage anymore. And it's just down to this Cobra to hopefully be able to finish off the Progetto 66 in this scenario. But they're actually reversing. That's because the Cobra said that they were reloading, but I think that they should be reloaded now. They get spotted, they're going to just drive forwards, and I guess they're just going to hope that the Centurion 7-1 isn't going to be able to engage them in this situation. And there the Centurion 7-1 is, who actually doesn't pen an HE shell on the Cobra. Now meaning the Cobra's in a 1 versus 1. This should be quite easy for the Cobra, right? Reset the view range. Will they go up and around again? Going up and around again would be pretty good, but they seem to want to side scrape, but they bounce the shot, so I lose. Q, but well played to the enemy team. So no battle heroes for me, so I only managed to get a 3rd class medal for a defeat. We managed to finish number 1 on damage, number 1 on experience with 742, and we made a big old profit even after resupplying a premium consumable at full price, because this is a premium tank and we didn't spam too much gold. So now I'm going to be rolling out on Pearl River, and you can see that I'm not focusing on the coated optics this time. I'm going to be using the rotation device instead, and just check out how much better our gun handling will be when we're kind of double stacking this rotation improvement effect, i.e. with the improved mobility combo equipment and also with that rotation device. So I'm getting into position fast in this TL-7. I guess they're not using that semi-turbo that we're getting from the improved mobility suite that once again just improves the bloom after firing. So if you do have any of the experimental equipment, I would recommend slapping it on this tank, as it's definitely a vehicle that will benefit from it. Okay, so the TL-7 in this scenario, perfect opportunity to just race up front and hopefully farm somebody up on a ridge line. So So that's what we're going to get forwards. I should go left here and go and take the high ground to be able to use my 10 degrees of gun depression. But, oh, a TVP and a Lorraine in position. Oh, this looks like a job for me. But unfortunately, the Lorraine actually falls back after getting a good shot into my tank with gold round preloaded at the start of the battle. Did they hit my weak point? No, they just decided to shoot straight at the mantlet of this vehicle. And so what I thought was going to be a great opportunity actually turns out really ugly for me. However, I should go to T-56 right through the front. They actually managed to ammo rack me. I repair my ammo rack. Think about aiming at the top. They've got 1 shell left. They fired that shell, so we should get forwards now and dump our other 3 rounds in. Okay, well, unfortunately, my lag there. Unable to be able to get one from the MIL-2. We bounce our next one, and oh dear. I have to admit, after that mag, I was feeling a little bit sad. I might have got very angry during that moment on stream, blaming my 280 ping. And while, look, the ping definitely doesn't help when you're trying to play a tank like this, which does require precise aim and requires great timing to be able to deliver those shots within your magazine. I think it's also just very telling that the vehicle sometimes runs hot and cold. It doesn't have very good accuracy. It doesn't have very good gun handling, even though I'm trying to improve it. But, what's this? Well, it's TVP, and unfortunately, I missed the first shot, only hitting his tracks. I get ammo racked another time. But now I'm up in his face, and I'm messing him up. And we just absolutely rip apart that vehicle. I say thank you to the Skoda on my team for helping me out there. And now, I actually go on my desktop, because I'm ammo racked for, like, the next minute, pretty much. I go on my desktop and I go and take a look at the armor of the TL-7 to try and refresh myself. So I'm going to fast forward the replay a little bit here until I get my repair kit back, and we're going to go after the enemy team again. Alright, so pretty rough start so far, right? I took 1,000 damage to deal only 1,000 damage. We've been ammo racked twice, suggesting you should definitely have safe stowage on this vehicle. But this is where this tank can really start going. Look at these mags. 1 into the side, faster than they can react, 2 into the side, 1 into the E75 here as well. Now we're going to follow it up with another one. Of course we are. Oh, baby. For situations like that, this tank is absolutely terrifying. It has a great intraclip reload, unlike something like a Char, the Char Future 4, which is one of my favorite tanks in the game at tier 9. And being able to just rip apart the T-54 Heavy and then the E75 afterwards, that was brutal. And what you're going to see here is just how this tank can snowball a game. And it's actually a really, absolutely brutal tank. I have to admit, I nearly completely crushed my vehicle there driving off, because I'm so used to like letting go at the perfect time. When you have that extra 250 ping, it's absolutely awful. But oh, look at this. And you can see how the rotation device is really paying off. I actually stopped firing at the UDES there because I knew he was going to burn and I wanted to save the extra shell, but maybe it was actually really greedy because I ended up, I think, taking 372 damage that he fired at me while he was on fire, and his reticle would have been a pineapple in the center of his screen, because when your tank is on fire, your crew are slightly panicking and probably not thinking so much about putting that final shot in. But we just shredded that UDES. 3 rounds in, 2 fires on the UDES, meaning that we deal pretty much like 1,500 damage there with 3 shots. And this thing, if you were to have Deadeye on this vehicle to be able to improve the amount of crits that you get, will be able to once again deal a significant amount of module damage. These are 120mm shells in caliber that are hitting the enemy vehicles, and they have increased module damage, and with Deadeye as well, combined with, you know, vents and a premium consumable to increase the effect of Deadeye, this thing can be absolutely nasty. And this is just the dream for this tank, really, right? I'm thinking about who I want to deal with first. Should I deal with the ISU first, or should I deal with the Borsig? Well, I guess if he's a one-shot, I can just go after him. And now I've still got shots with this Borsig. We come around the corner. Borsig's not firing at us. We put another round in, and we finish them off. And oh, yeah. What a comeback, right? We came back from... By the way, look how lagged I am that it actually displayed the kill so much after. Oh, God. I hope this is the last time that I ever have to gamble on the Asia server to be able to get you rare and unique tanks, so I can get you tank reviews early before they're actually released on the European server at least. Maybe it will be, but I do have an Idani as well that I have some gameplay with that I might be able to sneak in as well. But look at that dream scenario, and what a comeback here. What an incredible comeback. To go from like 1,000 damage and only have 500 hit points left. You can see I say kill all in the chat because I really wanted to have a big boy game and I could have farmed this UDES. Unfortunately, that won't be the case. So we went from just a horrible start in this battle to actually smashing a pretty nice ace tanker. With a high caliber for that 4,800 damage that we dealt, a top gun for those 6 kills. This was 1,559 base experience. That'll be an ace even if this vehicle was released. I don't think we fired many gold rounds, if any, so we got 145,000 credits profit, although that was with a 50% credit booster. So this thing prints it. And I think as this is going to be the first auto-loading tier 9 premium tank that isn't a light tank, this thing, when it gets going, can make you silly amounts of credits. It's such a comfortable tier to play as well, tier 9, which I find so much more fun to play than tier 8 because of the more varied matchmaking that it gets. For the final game in this tank review, I want to show you just how much the TL-7 blurs the lines between tank destroyer and medium tank. You see in this kind of a situation that they have 5 tier 8 tank destroyers and we have 4 tier 8 tank destroyers, and I matched up against a medium tank. So I want to try and do everything that I can do to actually influence the battle at the front rather than, you know, kind of just sit at the back. By the way, if you're wondering what's that vehicle there, that's an Edelweiss, which is actually one of the rare tanks from the Valkyria Chronicles collab that they did with the Asia server. I've actually got a review of that on my YouTube channel if you want to go and hear some anime crew voices as well. So I'm going to make a really aggressive play here. I'm going to get forward, and I don't know if this Borask is reloading. Maybe they fired a few shots on the way in. But they're going to have instant regret that they just get clipped out that hard by this tank. Am I going to try and follow it up with another shell? No, I'm just going to reload. This thing from that perspective is really disgusting. It's way better than a G-Saw because the G-Saw goes in with much less alpha damage. The G-Saw has 320, this has 360. This one's got the better pen on the standard rounds at least. And this one has more hit points and more armor than a G-Saw as well, allowing you to play cheeky. And you can see what kind of a position that I'm in now. How beautiful is this? This is only something that I would recommend doing if you're feeling like rolling the dice a little bit. And I felt like I was coming to the end of my time with the TL-7, coming to a final opinion on the vehicle. And so I thought I wanted to be a little bit cheeky and, oh, this is just, how dirty is this? Even my horrible ping can't seem to stop me from being able to rip apart these tanks. Is this a full mag from above? Oh, why do we have to ricochet the 4th? And why does the Basante have to manage to hit me there? Looks like he just went into the weak point on top of my tank. But dream mags. And just like that, we're up to 2,000 damage in this battle. And more importantly, just controlling this position and putting pressure on our opponents, stopping them from being able to use one of the most important positions in the game. When you're playing on fjords, if you spawn on the east, if you control the dip and you take the north, you create a crossfire that just destroys the field. And if I was in a stereotypical tier 9 tank destroyer without a turret, without mobility, I'd have to sit back there and just hope that my medium tanks were competent. However, I am to all intents and purposes a medium tank, so I can play a tank destroyer with crazy firepower that doesn't have to like rely on the medium tanks to actually play the game well. Now you could say that why don't you just play a Cobra if you want to play like this, and that's a fair assessment. So I make a bit of a greedy play here. I don't like that trade because now it means that I'm just a one-shot for the Basante, but at least I do get one into the Centurion 7-1, but now this Basante is about to have immediate regret. They've exposed the whole of their turret. I can find the back of the hull as well. We managed to finish them off. I'm thinking about getting the extra shot into the Borask there, but I think reloading to prepare myself for the possible attack of the Indian Panzer might be a better use of my hit points here. However, oh gosh, that Centurion 7-1's being a little bit cheeky. Kind of a little bit worried about this scenario. Hopefully I'm going to be able to reload in time before the Indian Panzer comes up, but I was actually quite relieved because the Indian Panzer are actually going over there. But what's this? How is this? Oh, come on. This cheeky Su-130 ends up in like the mother of all no man land. It looks like these tank destroyers and mediums just didn't see him drive around the corner, reverse towards them to be able to shoot me, shutting down my shenanigans. But what I wanted to show with this game is just how, if you're a cheeky player, how there's no need for you to play this thing just as a tank destroyer. You can also play this thing as a medium tank. And if you do that, again, you're taking one of the lesser competitive classes in the game, aka a tank destroyer, and you're turning it into the more of the competitive classes in the game, aka a medium tank. Every time you can do that, just like with the Iron Arnie. The Iron Arnie is a heavy tank in a medium tank's clothing. And heavy tanks are the most competitive vehicles in the game. So every time you can take one of the less competitive classes and turn them into one of the more competitive classes, then you have an opportunity for a great impact and a great overall win ratio with this tank. And if we take a look at the win ratio of the TL-7 on the Asia server in the last 30 days, we can see that it's packing a great win ratio, way better than the WZ-120 GFT, which is the first tier 9 premium tank destroyer in the game, with the TL-7 being sandwiched amongst all of the heavily armored tank destroyers such as the Tortoise, the T-95, the 263 and the CC Mark II, with it finishing second on damage just behind the WZ-111 GFT. So all in all, do I think that the TL-7 is about to be the new best premium tank destroyer in the game? Well, yes, kind of, at tier 9. I think this one is definitely better than the Chinese vehicle, the WZ-120 without the turret. However, is it really that much better than the huge glut of tank destroyers that we have at tier 8? Probably not. But considering that the G-Saw has the second best win ratio of any tier 8 tank destroyer, only behind the Kari, that you could argue the best players are playing to be able to train up their current Japanese tank destroyer crews, and that the TL-7 is, to all intents and purposes, just a bigger G-Saw at tier 9, I do think that this one will end up doing very well on the battlefield, and the main thing that is going to hold it back is the mediocre accuracy and the poor damage per minute. I will say though that all in all, I didn't really feel like the TL-7 felt like it was outrageous fun. Nothing on this tank feels reliable. The gun doesn't feel reliable, the armor doesn't feel reliable, the mobility doesn't feel super special. It's all just so well rounded. I personally think that a Char Future 4 or the Cobra, although they are medium tanks, will be a more enjoyable experience in this vehicle, but let's be honest, the real reason why you're going to want to play this is that it is a full-blooded tank destroyer that can give you those big boy credit profits while still having the autoloader kind of playstyle. This means that it's even more painful for me to highlight once again that the only way that you're going to be able to get this thing, at least for now, is going to be gambling inside loot crates. And what's also really concerning to me is that this is the first time the Chieftain has been available, I believe, since last September, and it's available in more gambling loot crates once again. So will this be a common theme that Wargaming are locking these more popular tier 9 premiums behind a gambling price tag that really doesn't matter so much for people like me who are collectors and have all of the vehicles, but will really matter for the normal player who doesn't have all of these tanks but maybe just wants this one because it looks really fun? Anyway, ladies and gents, boys and girls, that was my TL-7 tank review. Really hope you enjoyed this one. Give it a thumbs up if you did. Give it a thumbs down if you didn't. And let me know in the comments what you think about the TL-7, and also what do you think about these relentless loot boxes that Wargaming are throwing at us every few months. And as always, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic, and hopefully I'll see you soon.